Hello, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough. Today we're going back to the 80s to talk about one of the first toy tie-in cartoons. I've talked about plenty of these cartoons before, from Captain N the Game Master to Madballs gross jokes. The 80s was the hotbed decade for cartoons to be unsubtle toy advertisements. Not to say these shows were automatically bad because of this, but looking back on them, it's pretty apparent the studios were occasionally leaning over to the creators and saying, "Hey, can you put something in there that we can turn into a playset?" And this was long before the bigger names like Ninja Turtles, Transformers, G.I. Joe, or He-Man. Surprisingly, one of the first of this ilk was a cartoon based on the freaking Rubik's Cube. Seriously. The toy was released in 1974 and really hit its stride in the early 80s. Afraid the toy's popularity had reached its peak, this cartoon was made as a backdoor advertisement. Not sure how you can turn something as simple as this into a TV show with a storyline, but it was the 80s. People who had money and cocaine could make virtually anything into entertainment. The show was helmed by the animation studio Ruby Spears Enterprises, a studio made up of former Hanna-Barbera animators. If you're familiar with reviewers like me, Rowdy has done plenty of coverage of this studio and most of their work, this show included. Final bit of note, the show only lasted one season. Who could have seen that coming? But it lasted an additional 2 years in reruns on ABC, and when it was originally being aired, it was aired in the same time slot as another tie-in cartoon, Pac-Man. At least with something like Pac-Man, you could say there were characters and a story. How exactly do you make a show based on a Rubik's Cube? Well, let's solve that puzzle for ourselves. This is Rubik the Amazing Cube. Let's start with the intro.
On a mysterious night, Rubik Cube appeared, bringing happiness. Rubik Cube has changed everything in our lives. He's colorful, magical, lovable. Rubik, he's our friend. Rubik, the amazing cube.
Okay, we're like 30 seconds into the show, and I already have so many questions. Well, going off of the intro, the titular Rubik's Cube was originally owned by some guy in a horse-drawn carriage, because everyone still did that in the 1980s, obviously. And it fell out the back, was discovered by some kids, and since then became a world-saving friend of the children. Well, that's certainly an interesting way to make a plot for a Rubik's Cube cartoon. Who knows, maybe they'll go more into depth with that backstory in this first episode. Nope. But we'll come back to this point later on. As for the first episode, we begin on Halloween. Already off to a good start in my book. The three main kids, Ronaldo, Carlos, and Lisa, are out trick-or-treating with their cubic friend.
Trick or treat! Trick or treat!
What cute costumes! And who is under that sheet?
Oh, that's not a person. That's our cube friend Rubik. What she's trying to say is, it's a real ghost.
Well, here's another piece for your ghost.
At least she didn't seem too scared by the sentient Rubik's Cube with the goblin face on it. Now, if they were trick-or-treating just another town over... yeah, that wouldn't have ended as smoothly. Before I forget, the voice of Rubik is the same guy who played Horshack in Welcome Back, Kotter, with his voice being altered in editing. Because that's not creepy or anything.
My name is Rubik.
My name is Rubik is to Rubik what Happy Birthday is to Frosty the Snowman. It's basically his battle cry. Anyway, as the kids are wrapping up for the night, they decide to go into the haunted house that every neighborhood seems to have. Again, former Scooby-Doo animators here. Of course they were going to find a way to squeeze in a haunted house.
Rubik, I've told you, don't swallow the bubble gum.
How heavy is that Rubik's Cube if it's able to smash through a wooden porch? Well, they establish one key plot point that does come into play throughout the show. Rubik reverts into an inanimate state when his colors are scrambled, and he has to have his colors matched up to come back to life. So as the kids head into the house to look for him, we find out there are bad guys lurking around. But these ain't no ghosts. No, it's a mad scientist and his henchmen who are using the house as a place to test this cloning ray so they can have as many gems and riches they could possibly want.
Kids, I saw them, Dr. Angus.
You know what? Forget Scooby-Doo. These kids just wandered into every single haunted house episode of the Three Stooges.
Angel. Strangers in the house.
The kids wander into the basement and get noticed by the baddies.
It's them!
Don't let them get away, Bruno!
Whether it's a Halloween bag full of candy or a sack full of marbles, one way or another, there's always got to be an easy way to slip up moronic villains. Of course, the kids bring Rubik back to life, and he uses his magic to make the kids fly and make fools of the bad guys, like freezing the doctor into an ice block and getting Bruno's feet to step into concrete and give him concrete shoes. And then hanging him upside down. My god, they're about to pull a Mussolini on this guy. Oh, okay, of course that doesn't actually happen. The villains break free, locking the kids in a closet while they try to exploit Rubik's magic for their cloning machine.
What could have gone wrong? The diamonds are unaffected, but I have hundreds of cubes.
Using a candy wrapper, don't ask, the kids escape and make off with the cubes, unsure of which one is the right one. They head back to their house, and they make it apparent that they can't let their parents know about their supernatural friend.
We gotta get to our room without Mom and Dad seeing us, or the cubes.
Yeah, they don't know about Rubik and we can't let them find out.
I would say this is copying that trope that we see in stuff like E.T., but the really weird thing here is that this show came out before E.T. Either way, they manage to get past their parents and test out the cubes upstairs. But uh-oh, in enters their dog, who makes off with one of them. The dog runs outside into the night, the kids chase after him, and the bad guys chase after them, nabbing the oldest kid in the process. This looks bad at first, but the other two kids figure out the puzzle, and of course that just so happened to be the right cube. So using Rubik's powers, they fly and follow them to some kind of trade with a shady boat captain at the docks? Okay, the haunted house was one thing, but now we're hanging out by the creepy docks. They're not even trying to be subtle with the Scooby similarities. The other two kids and the dog are spotted and get chased around, but Ronaldo is able to reactivate Rubik, and he springs into action. Well, I mean, he does the most of it, but this is an 80s cartoon. The bad guys are mostly defeated through more weak slapstick.
Time for a little teamwork. Now for the old net trick.
Get us out!
Is it that 80s cartoon villains are so easily defeated by children? So the goons end up in the back of a cop car, begging to get away from the evil magic cube of death, and our heroes head home in a flying rowboat, their parents none the wiser.
Gee, I thought that candle burned out. You never know, Mama.
That was the first episode of Rubik the Amazing Cube. I would stop there, but, as it turns out, it seems the entire series has been uploaded to YouTube. For a while, it seemed this was one of those shows that was mostly lost. Some episodes were on VHS, which explains most of the footage quality, that's for sure. But as of a few months ago, there is a YouTube channel that has successfully collected all 12 episodes. Some of them are edited weirdly, but for the most part, the episodes are left in their entirety. So I watched a few more episodes, and they're about the same quality in terms of the writing. The plots all differ, but a lot of them have the same elements. Dumb bad guys are up to no good, the kids end up getting involved, lots of chases, Rubik has to have his colors matched up, uses his magic, and the day is saved. Some of the other episodes I watched involved the family going on a vacation to the beach, Lisa wanting superpowers and becoming a superhero, the kids meet up with their extended family for Christmas and end up stopping crooks who are trying to steal Christmas presents that were meant for poor kids. Surprisingly enough, there's actually an episode that delves a little bit into Rubik's backstory. Granted, it's the 5th episode out of the entire series run, but that's still more than I can say compared to shows like Da Boom Crew. In the episode, it's revealed that Rubik was owned by an evil circus magician who abused his magic. You'd think that with all that magic at his disposal, he wouldn't be stuck working a circus job.
It can't be. It's the cube. After all these years, I found it again.
Also, in some throwaway dialogue, they explain that he's not the same guy from the horse-drawn carriage that we see in the intro, and apparently he's had him longer than that guy did. Well, at least that explains why he doesn't look like that guy. All of this probably could have made for an interesting flashback episode in itself, but what do I know? Oh, and I forgot to mention, they first discover this guy because Carlos feels bad and wants to run away from home. Yes, they really managed to tick that cliche off the bucket list. It was the 80s after all, what you gonna do? Overall, Rubik the Amazing Cube is more of an oddity than a travesty. I mean, I've looked at plenty of worse shows and cartoons before this one, but that doesn't stop the fact that this was a really freaking weird show, even by 80s standards. The one thing about this show that seems pretty well intentioned is that they were trying to aim for a specific demographic, that being Hispanic audiences. For an 80s cartoon, that's pretty noble of them, even down to getting Puerto Rican boy band Menudo to do the theme song. The episode plots aren't terrible in themselves, and with stronger writing, it probably could have helped give the show some more identity. I always say this, but just because something's cliched doesn't automatically make it bad. Unfortunately, this is one of those shows where it was meant to be a commercial first and a show second. The characters are pretty weak, and it's pretty stupid that the main gimmick of the show is it's a magical sentient Rubik's Cube that comes to life when its colors are matched up. Even for 80s toy tie-in cartoons, you are stretching for a premise like that. If there is one other backhanded compliment I can give this show, at least this was still better than Madballs' gross jokes. But that's still not saying much. My personal opinion, if you wanted to do an awesome Rubik's Cube cartoon, they should have just based it off of Hellraiser.
Jesus wept.
That would have been awesome. I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough.